So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you guys are in North America. Appreciate you could attend this event today. So today we're going to be talking about how to reduce your technology spend with some of the current solutions you might have today and maybe haven't rethought about. So today we're going to basically try and challenge the status quo and what the AEC industry is doing today, and hopefully ways to help you be more efficient, more effective, reduce the stress on your staff, and maybe some of the tools that they're currently using. We're finding as many organizations are, many manufacturers are either changing their business models or increasing their prices. It's become a bigger issue, and we felt it was time for us to start having those conversations. So what you see on the screen is the agenda for today, and basically we're going to give you, I'm going to kick things off with a understanding why we're here, what we're thinking about, and then Alan and Nasuni are going to go through some of the tools. And again, we're not going to do big product demos, but more show you the highlights of some of the things that we think you might be able to replace. And then at the end, we'll do some closing remarks and Q&A to hopefully help us on this journey. So Alan, you want to move ahead for me? And for you guys who don't know, you got double dose of Alan, so I do apologize for that. I've been trying to get him to change his name for years. All right, so sorry, I got bad sense of humor. So let's talk about why this came up. So over the last year, maybe even 2 years during COVID, and as people were getting back into the office, there's a bunch of surveys that were going out. You've seen things from companies like Autodesk around the Design and Make International Survey, which reviewed probably a couple thousand people. Deloitte did a thing on the construction industry around data and access. Autodesk University was just in November, where they did a bunch of surveys there. And then we as an organization probably visit with thousands of organizations. And after reviewing all this data and the surveys and talking to clients, we said, here are some of the trends that came up that we think are important for organizations to be thinking about. If you guys haven't seen the Elevate event around Design and Make, there's a whole one on there from Autodesk that can take you through all the details there. But I want to talk about the major ones that we felt we needed to tackle based on what we heard. So the first one was around operational efficiency. So it's probably one of the biggest topics coming up because most organizations are looking to reduce waste in time and effort, materials, as much as they possibly can, while at the same time keeping a high quality service or product. Second topic that came up quite a bit was always around siloed data. And one of the things we see, especially whether it's around ERP systems, accounting applications, PM solutions, whatever it happens to be, there's a lot of applications out there that have siloed data, and everybody's talking about how do I get access data and how do I start doing analytics. The third thing that came up, and this is probably the biggest one, is organizations looking to try and figure out how to retain staff. And in some cases, I'm actually challenging the status quo of not just how do I retain staff, but how do I go entice more people to come work for us? Because if I can't change the habits of the younger generations, how do I make it more enticing people to want to come work for us? On that same note, I was reading the article just last week, and it talked about this year alone is going to be the biggest year for people that hit the middle part of retirement, so 65. So they're basically saying that on every given day, 10,000 more people are going to be hitting the retirement age. So that means the next couple of years are going to retire, which is going to affect, again, maybe that intellectual property you have, their knowledge, and we're going to have to figure out how to replace that generation. Many organizations are also, besides us talking about reducing the cost, they're also looking at actually future investments, and that could be related around technology markets are going to go into, or even things they're going to do to differentiate themselves in the competition. And then we're also looking at the digital experience. So one of the things that keeps coming up is not just how do I collect all this data, how do I make myself more operational efficient, but it's how do I deliver a better digital experience to my clients, whether it's from a visualization standpoint, delivery, or continued maintenance of that building or project or structure. And lastly, we talk about technology spend. And this was probably, if not the second, third biggest thing that most people talk about, because again, as we talked about earlier, a lot of organizations are seeing a huge uptick in their spend. And they're all starting to think about, how do I maybe not have the best solution, but how do I have a solution that lets me manage the data flow and reduce the amount of applications my staff is currently working with? So as I'm sure everybody in this call can look at something on the screen and say there's something that we're challenged with. So you mind jumping ahead for me? So let's talk about what we basically did. So as we, Alan, do you want to move ahead one? Okay. So as we started looking at saying, all right, what kind of tools that are most organizations using, and what's the cost associated with them? And we looked at a lot of different applications out there. And when I look at most organizations, we see that I probably ran into 25 to 50 different applications that most organizations are using. These were probably the most popular ones that came up. So again, think about things like all the different cloud storage places you have, whether it's FTP, Dropbox, OneDrive, all the type of applications or areas. One of the biggest solutions out there is Bluebeam. When you start looking at it, again, people got it because of the ability to create the Bluebeams. They're using it for other purposes now. Think about things like SketchUp. SketchUp's been around for 20 plus years using for conceptual design, and I still got issues when I want to start bringing into my AutoCAD model, Revit model, and how much data I lose based on how far I take it. You start also thinking about data replication tools. So over the last probably 7+ years, many organizations were dealing with the fact of how long does it take me to open up a file, and can I be more effective with it? But doing that, the cost is now starting to outweigh the benefits of what they looked at it for. And probably the one that's being used as much as Bluebeam, we have a lot of people using Newforma, and I always call it a cover my butt tool, because again, people are using it to track email correspondence that might not be part of your project management system, other applications you're using, but they still got to track that information because we've been using email for the last 30 years. And then you get in the tools we're using to do design intent, or how do I start representing my project to different people, whether it's inside the organization or outside. So we see a lot of people using things like Lumion, Enscape, user and applications like that. So as we started looking at all that stuff, we started asking questions. Why are they using them? In some cases, we're just used to it. In other cases, they're just comfortable with those applications. You might have clients that are demanding, dictating certain solutions you're being asked to use. In some cases, you haven't found something better. And probably the biggest one is most people are not aware of what they can currently do with their current applications. So what you're going to see on the right-hand side is we want to challenge the status quo of what organizations are looking at and how you might think about these solutions differently. And in a lot of cases, the reason we pick these solutions for 3 reasons. One, you've already got it built into your Autodesk collections or your renewal with Autodesk. Number 2, we felt that a majority of the organizations, so when you look at things like AEC Pro, it might shock some of you, but probably between 50 to 60% of the organizations out there actually have AEC Pro already currently in their system. And the last piece was really, are there solutions you're currently using that you might be using on a project, you might already have internally, like things like Autodesk built. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that any of these solutions are better than the current solutions that you're actively using. But what I am going to challenge you on is how do we make it more effective for our staff to get more done, to reduce rework or having to re-enter information. And number 3, how do we make it better for your clients from an experience standpoint to deliver something that's more effective at the end of the project where they can say, here's what my information is that I'm working on. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alan and Keniston to kick things off and take us through what we think we can do here. Alan?
Thank you, Alan. At least we both spell our name A-L-A-N. I'll say that. All right, well, thank you. So I want to start off today and really focus on, at this point, some low-hanging fruit. And I say that with Autodesk Docs being kind of the number one. It's kind of the star of the show, at least from my perspective, because when we're working with all the clients, as Alan Morse talks about, we meet with people all day long, every day, and just of different personas, different sectors, markets, and so on. And for the AEC industry, if you've got the AEC collection, you've got Docs. And a few things that will come up time and time again throughout the conversation today is some of the things that we want to focus on, which is you've got these, that's the whole technical spend, the technology spend. You have these things in your tool belt. We want to focus on things you already are paying for that you may just not be aware of. And now that we can understand that we have it, how can we begin to leverage it? And again, Docs, this is just, it's baseline, it's critical. And we need to start utilizing it. And what we get at with Docs is a number of different opportunities that extend beyond potentially where you, a solution that you potentially are currently using. So with Docs, for project-related content and documentation, it is absolutely just bar none, perhaps the best solution for those of us in this design space for many, many reasons. And as you will see over the next few slides, for reasons such as, why are we utilizing these other solutions? We need a centralized location for all of our content. Well, we can do that with Docs. Well, we need to be able to have the folder hierarchy and kind of the same. We need to be able to remake the network drive, so to speak, on the cloud. Can we do that? Yes, we can. We need to be able to have permissions and document versions and be able to follow things over the life cycle. Have a log of all of the activity on our files, and just be able to paint the picture and follow along the thread of a piece of information over its life cycle. Autodesk Docs gives us that capability. As you can see, it goes beyond it goes beyond storage, really. It's not just storage, because as we'll see here in a few minutes, where we talk about some of the activities that we can actually interact with our documents, but really importantly, what kind of document, what formats, what can we view versus what can we store. Whereas other solutions may give us the ability to store everything, that's fine. With it being Autodesk, the Autodesk construction, the Autodesk cloud, we have the ability to actually view these formats, whether it be the Revit. We can pull in Inventor files. We can have Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, Navisworks, etc. DWGs. We can view 2D. We can view our 3D. Whatever the case may be. It's just we really are extending the capability and the functionality of just a pure storage and document management solution. To expand on that a little bit, as you can see, these are just some screen caps that I have. And you can see on the left side here, we have a folder and file structure. These are Word documents that you can access. There's a Microsoft 365 integration, so you can literally have project documents that you need, Word documents that you need to be potentially collaborating on with others. If those others are remote, remember this is the cloud, so they can access this content wherever they may be. If you're, and again, a Word document, you can just click it on the Word document, open it up right there on the internet, not even having to work on the desktop. Same thing with spreadsheets. Depending on those documents, you can open them up and actually interact with them. PDFs, we always, PDFs are just so critical to the work that we do in our everyday lives. PDFs, we can open those up absolutely in the Docs environment, and we'll get to those in a second. In the middle here, you see the versioning, right? That's super, super important. We're always going to know what is current. As you can see there, the version 5 of a given DWG, this is the DWG. So when I'm going in and I'm opening AutoCAD, I'm literally opening up the current DWG file, right? That versioning is so super important to us in our workflow. We want to make sure that we're current, right? What's one of the most, what is one of the worst parts about the design phase when you're working on old information? It makes its way downstream and we miscommunicate. Well, that's one of the Docs has a solution for that. It can slow that down. And then models, of course, this is the Autodesk cloud. You have the ability to view your Revit models. If you have 3D CAD DWGs, you can view those. Navisworks models, again, Inventor files, whatever the case is, you have this 2D and 3D context that you're able to see, and you'll see those push pins, those dots there on that model. That comes into play here in a second. So again, it's just this additional level of activity and interaction that you get beyond just pure document management. And getting back to some of the solutions that were mentioned previously. So one of the things that's most important that we want to consider in reducing a tech spend and streamlining all of this pile of content or pile of applications that we have on our machines, and maybe getting to reduce that. Well, what are you actually executing in those given software? Are you using software just to view a PDF? Are you using it just to do some simple markups? Well, if that's the case, you might want to reconsider, or at least put an eye on Autodesk Docs, because you can do those things. You can view them. You get the versions of them. You can go and do the markup tools to go and do your clouds, do your call outs, things like that, right? You can go and communicate that. And this is where we kind of differ with Autodesk Docs, where we differ from some of the competition, is you're in that common data environment, the single source of truth. So as you're executing these markups and all the tasks to kind of move the design forward, you're doing that in one location. And as you can see here with that issue on the right side there, that is the issues. They're super important within the platform. An issue can be a ball in court activity, call it what you will. It's an action item. But what you can do is communicate something that needs to happen to one of your colleagues. And they're directly there in the BIM environment, in the Revit model. There's a coordination issues add-in for Revit. So you can actually be communicating with your users who are actually in the Revit model, but you could be in the web, you could be in Docs, and not even necessarily have to have Revit on your machine. And that's another super important piece of this conversation, is we extend the BIM world and the navigation of that world to other users, stakeholders who may not necessarily know how to navigate and cut a section in Revit. Well, if they're in Docs, they have access to that model, and it's a very simple navigation procedure, and it's kind of easy to get up and running in the modeled environment in Docs, and it really gives them access where they maybe did not have it previously. And so, as you can see, one thing I do want to point out here on the bottom, you see the ductwork and the markup of that. Something that's super important about this platform. This is where Autodesk is putting their time and their investment. This is the thumbnail markup for an issue. So Autodesk realized that we needed to be able to mark up in 3D. We didn't have that capability. And then a couple of releases ago, they brought this out. And this is there's just so much more utility you get out of that 3D view versus the 2D. We all know that a picture's worth 1,000 words. 3D is so much more, it's just so much more illustrative of what is going on in that context. So that's where this 3D comes about. It's from consumers, it's from the customers commenting and saying, hey, when is this can we do this? Giving the feedback to Autodesk. They are reactive. They have bi-monthly updates to the platform. This is where they're focusing their efforts. And we'll see later where we talk about mobile access as just a super added benefit that you may or may not even be aware of or leveraging. And so far, we've really just spoken about Docs. And for everyone's knowledge, where does Docs play the role? Docs is the common data environment. It's the storage. It's where all of the content in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, whether it be BIM Collaborate Pro, just storing your CAD files, your Revit models, etc. It's where everything lives. It's where they are stored. And so BIM Collaborate Pro, this is where your content is stored in Docs, of course, but with BIM Collaborate Pro, we introduce the ability of the Revit cloud-based work sharing capabilities, let alone with Civil 3D and being able to do that collaborative effort, as well as AutoCAD Plant 3D, all capable within the BIM Collaborate Pro environment. And as you see there on the bottom, that's the design collaboration environment. That is the Revit cloud-based work sharing environment. And as we'll see, some of the icons there, we'll touch on later with meetings and email with correspondence and things like that. All of these things, all these modules and these tools are available to us in the BIM Collaborate Pro environment. And so why might we consider BIM Collaborate Pro to potentially streamline some of the, potentially maybe reduce some of our tech stack? Well, on the market today, there's definitely a ton of solutions out there to facilitate these kinds of collaborative environments. But when you go and do an investigation, you will, as I have, as clients ask questions, I have to go and do the research. There is no solution that can facilitate the actual cloud-based work sharing that stays up to date and doesn't have lockout. You don't get locked out. You don't have issues with synchronization. There is nothing on the market that can do that outside of BIM Collaborate Pro, certainly in the Revit context. So in the past, there were these solutions that, before the cloud really exploded and became just ubiquitous as it is today, we needed to deal with latency. We had to have solutions that could expedite sharing. Well, we don't necessarily, with all the advancements we have today, we don't necessarily need some of those solutions that we used to deploy. And so, and here's what I would say about some of these other solutions. By all means, we're not going to be able to replace Docs with a enterprise document solution that ultimately is going to store everything outside of your design world holistically, necessarily. So it really is project focused and so on, but ultimately Docs can facilitate the storage and the management and all that we talked about, but it also affords us the permissions, the locking capabilities, the collaboration, the 2D and 3D, certainly 3D beyond what some of the competitors can deliver. As well with BIM Collaborate Pro, it gets us that worldwide access. So, you can be anywhere and everywhere and have your collaborative team be remote, everybody working in that same co-authored environment within the Collaborate Pro environment.
And Alan, can I add something here?
Sure.
So one of the things, we have a lot of organizations that typically looked at things like Panzura, Nasuni, and these other applications for data replication. And what we're finding is two things are going on. One is because of things like ABC Pro, which most organizations have access to now, you don't have the same issues with the speed of opening a file. Number two is we're finding a lot of organizations, especially during COVID, where they're letting a lot of people work from home. These solutions, because of limitations, because of hardware or the software side of things, don't have the same abilities as what you did when most organizations bought them. And number three, for the cost associated today versus what you've already got, the question comes down to is, am I still using it? Is it still as beneficial as it was 4, 5, 6 years ago when I bought it, when everybody was in the office? And so there's just some things to think about. Thanks, Alan.
Absolutely. And so this is something that we want to that may raise an eyebrow. We need to make sure that we are aware of and that we're leveraging all the things that we are maybe currently paying for. It isn't even in this today, we're not even necessarily talking only about reducing tech stack, but maybe we're just really wanting to impress the fact that on you that you have these other things that are in your tech stack, not necessarily getting rid of some of these other ancillary tools, but by the way, did you even know that you had these capabilities? One of them really in particular, I talk to people all the time, with BIM Collaborate Pro, are you aware that you have this other whole side, the model coordination side? And this model coordination side, maybe you're utilizing other platforms to do a model coordination process. Well, with BIM Collaborate Pro, you set up and configure your design teams, and all of a sudden you have this automated clash detection and design coordination aspect that you did not have previously. You could run them, you could run some tests and things in the, in interference checks in Revit, but it's just not going to be as efficient as it would be if you're executing that with the model coordination tool here in ABC Pro. And it's great because you set it and forget it. You can go back and it's going to run your clash matrix, and it will be continually updating as your models are published. And it's just something that you're not going to get outside of this platform. But it goes, if you're literally using BIM Collaborate Pro solely for Revit cloud-based work sharing, bottom line, take a look at some of the rest of these capabilities. And so that's really just the model coordination side. I think one of the most important things here as well, what we need to consider, how are we executing design meetings? How do you manage your design meetings? How do you keep up to date with what we've checked off and we've moved along? Design meetings, field meetings for construction, out in the trailer. Doesn't really matter what persona you are with ABC Pro, but also with Build and all the tools in Build, Autodesk Build. You've got things like these meetings where they keep you up to date. You can do the references and connect a file, connect a Word document, connect a model, connect a PDF, whatever the case is. And you're connecting all these data points, these threads, to make a cohesive narrative downstream. And so this is something that we come across literally most every day. And just for instance, how are you? You may have this in your tech stack currently. Autodesk, again, they have bi-monthly releases. About 2 releases ago, maybe 3. I think maybe 3, they released the public beta, and then for the last couple releases, it has been out there for us to use. Very, very important, the correspondence module. So this is this was a really important, not shift, but addition to the platform. Now we can both create email directly here out of the platform of the ACC, whether it's ABC Pro or in Autodesk Build, or you can just CC the public email address for your emails, for your project. And you're going to consolidate all project-related information and email into the project. It'll be searchable. You can create different email types that you can use, and so on and so forth. So, we always have that problem to go and find that email that eludes us at the end, and you're trying to get out the door or get your project out the door. You can't find that one piece of information. Well, utilize correspondence. It'll keep it all in one place. And a couple other things that are super important. Certainly, if you have a solution such as a Newforma, you're most likely going to be managing things for construction administration or whatever it is downstream. Well, that's where something like an Autodesk Build can deploy as a solution, where manage your RFIs, manage your submittals, go and do site walks, create your punch lists, be able to take photos. You're able to introduce a whole host of workflows within this common data environment that is, again, this continuous stream of data from the design phase all the way through delivery and construction. One more, and then we'll pass it over to Keniston. So one of the things that we may or may not be aware of, you have the AEC. If you have the AEC collection, you've got Docs. Well, one of the things that we would recommend, if you've got access to Docs, go in and make sure it's set up in your account manager. Go upload a file today. Take that Word document, that CAD file, that Revit model, upload it, and you're going to be able to go download the app on your iOS or Android device, and you're going to be able to go and access that information in the field. And much of the content and the activities that we've noted today are capable both in desktop, but importantly in mobile. So that's just something to consider. Again, most likely within your current tech stack, do you have a solution in place where you're trying to access models in the field? Well, with Docs and Build, you have that accessibility. All right, I'll pass it over to Keniston.
Okay, this is Keniston, and we will start talking a little bit about more so on the design side of things, but it will also bleed into construction as well. And if you've downloaded the 2024 release of Revit, it may have become front and center that Autodesk really likes this software called Twinmotion. Autodesk does not own Twinmotion. It's actually produced by a third-party company called Epic Games. You might be familiar with them as being the makers of Unreal Engine, which is a rendering engine that has become pretty much the standard for computer graphics, whether you're doing high-end video games or even cinema graphics for Disney or Pixar or Disney DreamWorks and so forth. But it's also being used pretty heavily these days in the AEC space as well. What you see here on the screen is, again, actually the sample file that Autodesk updated the 2024 release with. That is actually, the renderings and stuff that you'll see were produced using Twinmotion. So next slide. So where does Twinmotion essentially fit into the basket here? Well, it's sort of tangent to softwares that you may already be using and may have been using for a couple of years called Enscape and or Lumion. Those softwares have certain capabilities and there are certain drawbacks. One drawback that both Enscape and Lumion have is that there are additional costs, whereas now Twinmotion is pretty much baked into every single Revit license. In years previous, if you're still using, say, Revit 2022 and 3 and so forth, it would still be considered an add-on. But as you can see here at the top image here, it's actually baked into the View tab within Revit, and basically to get you guys to utilize Twinmotion as your primary rendering resource. It's used not just for rendering though. It can be used for a lot of things. Videos. You might be seeing some car commercials come out lately, and I can tell you that based on what I've seen, there's a good chance that a lot of that is completely CGI. As well as specific, product placement. So if we've got any manufacturers of things on our call today, Twinmotion or Unreal Engine is certainly, the direction that they're going. But we're also using it, to convey ideas about the construction itself, and we could do that through a large, and well, quite frankly, ever-growing library of assets. Of the numbers that the other softwares that you're currently paying for that we will not name, but we've got up here, they can only dream about. Now we're talking about millions and millions of assets and growing daily. And you can have easy access to all of that through the library that's within Twinmotion. You see that, not only do we have sort of what I like to call out-of-the-box assets, but Twinmotion, believe it or not, also has acquired Sketchfab, which is a user community. So for CGI assets, so you're constantly getting stuff added to that. They now have purchased Adobe Substance, so you get all the materials and stuff for that. So if you're, say, interior design, or again doing architecture, and you're looking for very specific materials for your construction, there's a good chance that you'll find it in a very high quality within Twinmotion versus other locations. And of course, you could also create your own user libraries. So if you've got content in like your SketchUps or whatever else, AutoCAD blocks or Revit families that you've built up over the years, you could absolutely turn all those into high quality Twinmotion assets. And again, not just for renders, still images like this, but videos. But it's also got something called a presenter tool, which basically can drop your user into the scene and allow them to experience your project the way that you intend for them to experience it, essentially when it's finished. And so that could be a very, very high quality communication tool with your clients, whether they're homeowners or business owners, tenants, um, building department individuals, and we'll see in coming slides, even your contractors and such, being able to communicate construction scheduling and such to some degree. So it's a very, very high level tool. Yes, you can even leave comments on the Twinmotion scenes, and then there's plugins for Revit that will allow you essentially to see those comments from Twinmotion and react to those. So let's say you're having a design charrette with a customer, and you've got 5 different material choices, or you've got one layout versus the next that they like. You can leave those comments, and then your modeler and or drafter back in the office can go in and pull in that file and see hey, this is what I need to change, and then re-export it. Super, super easy. You don't have to redo anything, and it just fits really, really nicely into workflows that you already have. And again, you're not paying anything extra for this capability. Next slide. Speaking of not paying extra for capabilities, one of the capabilities of Twinmotion is sort of a very high-level construction sequencer, where you can actually do project phasing. If you want to do the Gantt chart option, that's certainly possible. You could use it for various design options of your design as well. But again, it's all built into Twinmotion as that capability. So even your contractors might be able to make use of it as a communications tool. That being said, if you are looking to do very in-depth and intricate animations for construction sequencing and such, I would still recommend Navisworks, which is pretty much what I would call one of the leading industry standards when it comes to that. But at the same time, at least in my experience, it's also a very underutilized tool within Navisworks. So again, even softwares that you guys might already be using, are you using the entire portion of that software for what you're looking to do? And so that kind of covers a lot of the sort of design / construction phasing communication. But what about earlier in the projects, conceptualization and such? Next slide. This is where you guys might have been using SketchUp and other things in the past. Well, I'm often surprised by how many companies do not understand that they already have access to essentially the same thing, and perhaps in some ways what I would argue to be a better tool. One of those being Format. Now, Format is essentially Autodesk's version of SketchUp. So those that are using SketchUp currently, the controls in Format should feel very, very familiar to you. But where Format differs actually is, one, obviously being a part of the suite that you already own, but it is entirely mobile based, which means that you could open it whether it's a laptop or put it on a tablet and take it out to a job site and really start to understand your massing and the way that the shadows fall and all that stuff. And you can even run early energy calcs from it using Insight. You can also use Format to bring in SketchUp content. So again, if you've been using SketchUp for years, you don't have to throw away, the thousands of awnings and doors and all these other things that we've probably collected over the years to use a SketchUp. You can use that in Format as well. One thing that Format is that SketchUp is not also is that it is bi-directional with Revit. So you're not losing anything. You're not having to recreate anything in one software and then, go from scratch in another one. If you do your early, massing and stuff in Format, you can take it right into Revit, turn it into, Revit parts and pieces. You can even take it back into Format to further refine it. Maybe you want to twist the building around a little bit, to better capture some of the sunlighting conditions and things like that. You can absolutely do that. It is bi-directional. Speaking of things that you might want to tweak on your buildings, and then even earlier conceptual phase, this is kind of where your developers and your architects, maybe to some degree building planners for the building departments might be coming into play. And that's using something that's relatively new to the Autodesk Cloud environment called Forma. If you haven't heard that name before, you might have heard of it under its earlier version called SpaceMaker. What Forma does now in Autodesk is it allows you to basically plan out your site and really run some solid analyses tools through it. They do now have plugins for Revit. So again, it's pretty much bi-directional with Revit. It also works with Rhino if that's your cup of tea as well. But some of the types of analyses that you can see here that you can run are sun, and they're on the left and sort of the yellow. Then you've also got daylighting analyses to make sure that you've got enough daylight hitting various areas. You can also do wind, and now you can also do noise. So you can study various traffic conditions and things like that around the site to understand how better to design your buildings. You can also utilize a parking generator tool within it to start generating some parking ideas. And the best part about it is, again, it goes directly into Revit. So all the topo and site context and stuff like that you see here becomes exactly that when it gets pulled into Revit. So again, the key thing here between these tools as well as Twinmotion is we're cutting down on rework in many cases, as well as opening up the capability to analyze your designs and communicate those ideas. Not just very, very early stage, but also perhaps even right down into the construction stages as well. Okay, next slide.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Keniston. So Alan and or Scott, we can just kind of wrap up here.
Yeah, so let me close things up and we'll answer any questions that might come up there. Again, remember, if there are questions, there's a question section. You can put your question in. If not, give everybody some time back. But basically, at the end of the day, we know all these tools. We know most tools we talked about are embedded in your everyday workflow. Many for many years, and most of them have a huge fan following. Any change you guys decide to make requires a mindset shift. And you might, in some cases, get pushback from clients. You might get pushback from your staff. And we hear it all the time. And you guys have all heard the phrase before. This is how we've always done it. My ask for you today is to, again, take that open mind and really look at your current workflow. What applications are you currently using? Do I have applications that have the same functions as other ones. And in some cases, even ask the question, is it okay that I have multiple because maybe it's important, required, demanded, it has the main features we need. And even the big question is, are they still needed? You might have bought them 4, 5, 10, 15 years ago because it was what you need. And the question is, have we really rethought that in a while to say, is it really the best solution out there now? And then start thinking about, do you have a good workflow to go from application to application? If you don't, it's something really important to think about, because again, as we talk about, the biggest issue is I can't find staff, or I need to do more with the same or less. It's going to be important. And the last thing to think about, and this is what we run into all the time, and the reason why people have all these other solutions is, how many versions of truth do I want or do I need on a project? And if I can reduce the amount of places where that data is being stored, is there a benefit for me? Does it help me reduce risk, liability, people asking questions, or in some cases, improve communication? So again, I'd like to thank Alan and Kennison for taking the time to take us through this high level. Again, I know it was a high level conversation. If you guys have more information or want to talk about specific workflows, please reach out to your Imagine representative. They'll be able to help you. So, Laura, I don't know if you have any questions out there.